Hello and a very good morning. This is Out of Doors live here on BBC Radio Scotland. I'm Mark Stephen. In a slightly overcast, mizzly, drizzly sort of day, it's a bit grey and I could swear blind as midges. Anyway, we're gently going to guide you towards a weekend, albeit midgie-ridden, in the Scottish countryside. Coming up before 7, should there be more women involved in farming?
The real asset that women bring to farm businesses is the ability to think outside the box, undertake farm diversification activities, think innovatively about where can we go in terms of marketing. And a lot of women who are coming into agriculture are highly educated. Actually, there's good evidence to suggest they're better educated than the men in farming right now.
More on addressing that gender imbalance in agriculture shortly, plus the phoenix that's literally rising out the ashes on the Forth. Why the mudflats there are proving a real attraction for bird life. With me this morning, as ever, Mr. Ewan McElwraith.
Good morning. Get in touch with us and tell us what you're doing in the outdoors this weekend, because we love to hear about your agricultural shows, your Highland Games, your farmers' markets, your fete, basically any sort of activity you're involved in. We'll bring you the mountain and sea conditions shortly. You can text us on 80295, tweet at BBC Out of Doors. The email address is outofdoors@bbc.co.uk, or call Frankie on 08 085 92 95 00.
This might surprise you, but Scotland actually has 11% of Europe's coastline. 11%, and that's something that really defines us, from long sandy beaches to high cliffs. But it's a constantly changing environment. And that's something that's the subject of a new study called the Dynamic Coast Project, which aims to chart the ways in which these places have changed, looking back as far as the 1890s. Dr. Alistair Rennie has been conducting the research on behalf of the Scottish Government and Scottish Natural Heritage. I met him on the beach at Findhorn, where he described how that part of the coastline has evolved.
Where we're sat here today, the Moray Firth, it's got one of the most spectacular collections of beaches in the country. And the flying bar at Culbin's moving westwards at some 22 metres a year. There's been a bar at Culbin doing that for thousands of years. Whiteness Head, the next one further along towards Inverness, it's moving at 16 metres a year. The volumes are amazing. It's 160,000 cubic metres of sand a year going round the end of Whiteness Head. And that would fill an Olympic swimming pool up in one per week. So the amount of change that we have naturally occurring on our shoreline is huge. And reflecting back on that past change, it gives us a different perspective. 78% of our shoreline is rugged and unlikely to be affected by erosion.
So by rugged you mean not soft? Because I was going to question you on that too.
Yeah, so the rocky shores that we see on postcards, and we see stunning shorelines, and that's in people's minds when they think of Scotland's coastline. We've got a hugely long rocky shoreline. 11% of Europe's coastline is Scottish, but some 20% of that is soft and potentially erodible. So that's the beaches, the dunes, the salt marshes, and we've mapped those and how they've changed over the last 120 years. So we took the maps from the 1890s, maps from the 1970s, and modern day mapping, and seen how they've changed through space and time. And what we've found is since the 1970s, the proportion of shoreline that's moving has increased. So 3/4 of our soft coast, our beaches and dunes, has remained in roughly the same sort of place since the 1970s. 11% has accreted seawards, so that's the shoreline building out and new land being created. But 12% has eroded landwards. That's 442 kilometres. And if we stretch that out, that would stretch between Edinburgh and John O'Groats. We've then had a look at what assets are behind the soft coast, what assets are behind the engineered shoreline, behind seawalls and these sorts of things. And we've found that about £13 billion worth of assets, roads, railways, buildings, are protected by our soft coastal defences, our natural defences, if you like. And that compares with about £5 billion worth of assets behind seawalls. So the message is kind of quite clear that actually nature's providing a huge service to us here, and we need that to be part of our approach if we're going to understand and manage the coastline better as far as climate change is concerned.
The process of erosion and accretion, I mean, erosion is taking away, accretion is building up. Culbin Sands is an example of something that is building up, essentially. That's fine, that's a natural process, but what your research seems to be suggesting is that process is happening faster than it used to. Why?
It's consistent with with our expectations as far as climate change. The obvious one, sea level rise. We've had sea level rise in many bits of Scotland now for many, many decades, and the Aberdeen tide gauge has started to rise and wobble a bit, but rise generally since the turn of 1900 or so. So Scotland's experiencing sea level rise, and it's no surprise that our soft shorelines are affecting that.
This knowledge, is it much of a comfort? And by that I mean, we know things are happening faster, you know the scale of it, you know the value of the resource that is behind these soft defences essentially. What can we do about it? How much would it cost?
It is comforting in the fact that we now know the scale of the issue and where we don't have issues. And that's an enormously helpful thing to know where we then put our resources in. So if we stand back for a second, the government's got some fairly ambitious plans, some really ambitious plans as far as climate change mitigation, cutting carbon dioxide and the like. But they've also got equally ambitious plans as far as climate change adaptation. These maps and the reports that go with them support that. So whether it's at assessments at a government level, Scottish government level, or local authorities, or public bodies such as Scottish Natural Heritage or Historic Environment Scotland, then understanding how better they can manage our resources, the natural heritage, the protected sites for cultural heritage, the castles and battlefields and scheduled monuments. If we each share the same evidence, then this isn't any one organisation's problem, it's a shared problem, and arguably the solution also needs to be shared. So the government they know this is a risk, coastal erosion is a risk, and it's affecting many shorelines around the world, so in that regard there's no surprise. But now we have the evidence, we have some expectations as far as our policies on how we need to work together, and this enables that to happen, whether that's at a government and local authority level or a community level or businesses. Having a look at the maps, seeing how it's changed, and then saying, God, I wondered, I thought there was something going on there, but actually that's interesting. That means the following for my plans as far as my bit of shoreline. As you say, there's bits of our shoreline that have always changed, and arguably that's the way we should be managing them. We should be predicting this. We should be working with that in our mind. So when it comes to managing salt marshes or sand dunes or important bird nesting areas or putting in important road or infrastructure or golf courses, making sure that they're climate proof, that's a prerequisite, isn't it? We should be planning with this in mind.
Alistair Rennie of the Dynamic Coast Project.
There's a lot of interesting points in that, especially the one about should we be doing anything?
Well, because what they've done with this baseline study is say, look, where are the likely problem areas? They know that the level of erosion is actually increasing, or the rate of erosion is actually increasing. And then what they've done is looked at the value of what is behind the coastal zone and said, right, if you are going to target it, this is where you've got to target it. Sometimes it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's very subjective though, isn't it? The point.
No, it's got an actual value.
Should you stabilise golf courses? We protect housing.
Yes.
There's a lot of difficult arguments there.
Yeah, well, the thing about stabilising golf courses, obviously, is depends how you stabilise the golf courses. If it's a dune environment, if it's a linked course, for example, that's meant to be dynamic. It's not meant to stay in the same shape year after year after year.
I suppose on river systems, they've actually addressed a lot of this already, and maybe coastal's catching up, because the accepted practice now is actually erosion's a natural process, and the more you do to prevent erosion upstream, channels a huge force of water downstream, which goes for a bigger problem. But yeah, we certainly welcome your thoughts on that. You can email out of doors at bbc.co.uk.
Or you can phone Frankie on 08085 92 95 00. Quick look at the weather forecast for this weekend. Driest, brightest weather will be over more western climbing areas. There will be sunny spells during the day. Clouds are going to bubble up and a few afternoon showers are likely, though. They'll be mostly light and well scattered, leaving a lot of dry weather.
The eastern areas on the other side will be rather cloudy, with occasional sunny spell developing during the morning. It will be a continuing risk of showers and potentially quite heavy in places.
Across all areas, cloud bases at first about 2,000 feet, that's about 600 metres. Winds are going to be light on the tops, mainly west or northwesterly, with an average speed of 15 miles an hour, not too much of a trouble. Temperatures on the summits about 8 degrees Celsius.
And if you're getting out in the water, and this is really good news because I'm heading off on a herring trawler very, very soon. It's going to be light winds.
That's very good news.
Light winds, mainly westerly in the direction of about force 3. Around Orkney and Shetland, we're going up there. It's going to be northeast 4 first, decreasing 3 or less by this afternoon. So it's going to be flat, glassy water all round Cape Wrath. It's going to be a joy.
Right.
That's a very noisy motorbike, isn't it?
Right. When you think of a farmer, describe a farmer to me.
I'm seeing a yawning pit in front of me, 'cause
Oh,
I
yeah,
know many
crack on.
farmers, but as a sweeping generalisation, you would say male, and a guy in a short-sleeve check shirt,
Yeah.
and those funny brown shoes that they wear, the tan shoes, if they're going out to the mart.
Oh, aye, yes, aye. The sort of London tan, slightly orange shoes.
Yes.
Yeah, well, the key point you made there was male. That pretty well sums it up. There is a clear gender imbalance in farming. The Scottish Agricultural Census last year found that just over a third of working farm occupiers are female. But worse than that, women are appallingly underrepresented in the boards of farming organisations. That's why the Scottish Government has commissioned the James Hutton Institute to look into this. What is clear is that women play significant roles in farming operations, but that's not always recognised. Now, Claire Needler is a researcher in her own right, but happens to be married to a farmer, and Leanne Sutherland is a senior social scientist at the James Hutton Institute. And we just wanted to sit down and chat about this generally.
The project is about women in agriculture in Scotland. The Scottish Government were looking to establish a baseline for what women contribute to farms. So we had a look at their daily lives, at their career paths, at their aspirations, and their role in farming organisations. Over the course of the research, we also learned some things about inheritance and farm safety that we included in the report.
And Claire, what's your position here? What's your position on the farm?
I don't really have a role on the farm. I met my husband, who is a farmer, 12 years ago. So I've been on the farm for 12 years. They've been here for about 200 years. And I'm a mom and I do the dishes and all that kind of stuff. But I have a job off the farm as well. And that's really important to me, but not so important to the farm business, I suppose.
Would you like to be more involved in the farm?
Actually, for me, it's really important to have a life outside the farm. And over the years since I came here, I've had hens and I've had bees and I've grown vegetables and I'm on the committee of the Ellen Ladies Farmers Dance. And, you know, I've done...
You can see floral frocks in there somewhere.
Exactly. I feel like I've kind of done my bit to integrate myself into the community, but that it's important to me to have my own identity out with as well.
Is Claire unusual?
I don't think so. I mean, that's one of the things that we found in the study is that women who marry into farming sometimes struggle to find a role in the farm itself. And there are kind of two main pathways into agriculture, and one is being born and raised on the farm, and that was certainly the majority of women in the survey had either been born on a farm and raised there or had some experience through an uncle or a cousin or grandparents. But then there is a cohort of women who married farmers, and they have very varied roles in the farm. Some of them become very involved in farm diversification activities, for instance. But because they didn't develop that skill set growing up and kind of the credentials that go along with it, knowing how to drive tractors and feed livestock and all that sort of thing, they struggle to find their place within kind of the main farming organization.
I know this is a wild generalisation, but I was thinking of a very good friend of mine who married a farmer and got a tremendous row from her mother-in-law because her mother-in-law came in one time and found her actually power washing the byre. And she said, we have men for that kind of thing. And it's almost as if your role is either paperwork or home baking.
I mean, what we found in the study is that women are involved in the full range of farming activities. They do drive machinery. They do, to be fair, a lot of the paperwork, but they care for livestock. The whole range of things that happen on a farm, women are involved in and have those skills.
You were nodding through it.
Yeah, I think when you think of professions, there's not many professions that are male-dominated where the woman has a specific role.